During my 20s, my beloved country was going through a painful transition of instability and violence. To survive, my family had to split up wherever we could to seek refuge. I was the first in my family to do so. Escaped and came to the United Kingdom. Once in Britain, I was moved from pillar to post. I was moved from Bournemouth to a detention center in Gatwick, to Ockington Barracks, then to Luton, where many absconded, but I remained. Finally, I was brought to Leicester by the immigration authorities and housed in the Leicester International Hotel. The name sounds a lot better than the conditions and the hospitality. But you know what? I was thankful. I was safe. However, a few months after, I remember reading a letter from the immigration authorities that we had to move within 7 days or the offers of deportation. I was homeless. I was cold and left alone, left with nothing. I was terrified. A lot of fellow asylum seekers and those who inhabited the same place, some committed suicide in their rooms because they could not go through the terror that they were coming from. I too should have wanted to end my life, but wrong, not me. I had a fire in my belly. I needed to believe that my suffering and pain was not in vain. My father had taught me courage. He taught me courage, especially at the time where I watched my mother die. It was the day before my 9th birthday when I heard she was gone. The flower faded, not to flourish again. It would seem like a vast amount of my memory concerning that time had disappeared. But I recall vividly weeping until I was sore. I will never see her again in this life. I will never hear her voice or feel her tender touch. I will never stroke her hair or her beautiful face. She was gone. The immense strength and courage that my father showed me was truly my rock and inspiration. He became both my mother and my father. My father, who lost his wife, suppressed his grieving whilst providing comfort and love to us as children. Like me, he must have wondered why fate had brought such immense trauma and tragedy to our lives. He was left alone with 5 children who needed food and shelter, 5 children who needed love, emotional support, and counseling, 5 children who didn't know and needed to know about the world. Living an infant who needed maternal care. There was something in him that kept him going. There was a fire in him that burned, a fire that I inherited. For when I look back, I realize now that it passed the strength and courage to me. Today, I thank publicly one person who gave me hope, love, and aspirations to continue. Thank you to my Samaritan family, Bishop Mark Anderson and his beautiful wife, Mrs. Sharon Anderson, and their 2 sons. I no longer lived in a rat and cockroach-infested, eating unhygienically prepared food. Instead, I spent 8 years living with them as a family member. I was an asylum seeker who received status after 12 years. I got no assistance during these years. I could neither work, nor could I engage in any educational courses, despite wanting to. The time I spent alone during these so-called wilderness years allowed me plenty of time to reflect and to analyze my life quite deeply. I came to the realization that it is my duty to help others as I received help in my darkest hour. For those of you who don't know much about asylum seekers, let me tell you, as an asylum seeker in the UK, I had no job, no benefits, no home, no family, no access to education. What should I do? What could I do? I was an asylum seeker for 12 years. 12 years, imagine that. That's a newborn to almost an adolescent. So how did I survive and why? It's quite simple. The power invested in me by my mother and the strength of my father kept me alive. I was blessed to have a Samaritan family who opened up their home to me. So what did I do in my wilderness years as an asylum seeker? I wanted to feel a part of the community, so I decided to volunteer my time and explore how I could value the new home, the new city, and the new country. I decided to work in disadvantaged communities who needed help and generally kept myself busy. This also made me feel valued. I decided to grow my own food, as my experience of eating ill-prepared food inspired me to create my own recipes and share with my local community. And there was no commercial benefit. The church supported me in providing me facilities. The success of my recipes have now forced me to write a second book. I learned and taught sign language in communities that were in desperate need of resources during the day. I even wrote a children's book to help our global community. An achievement that has given me great satisfaction has been the ability to reach nations, touching lives. For example, a teacher in Ghana said some students who wanted to give up their hospitality course, when they read about me, they were moved and encouraged to continue their studies. This has definitely been a proud and significant achievement, being a role model to people abroad who I have never met. Of course, like many of us who experience trauma, we look to vanities to create outlets. I chose music, helped by my church, and became a co-founder of Emmanuel Apostolic Gospel Academy Choir, which birthed the Montfort University Gospel Choir. Being a member of the Gospel Choir and a Pentecostal chaplain has provided me the opportunity to reach to people in our local community, nationally, and also abroad. Singing has been a savior of my soul, and singing in a choir has enabled me to impact people from all walks of life. I've been able to create and live my dream. I found my home in Leicester. I am an entrepreneur, entertainer, and a happy member of a warm and welcoming city. Oh, and by the way, guess what else? I sang as a backing singer for one of the famous groups, Kasabian, and I also shared the stage with them. I also shared the stage with them and celebrated the biggest football success here in Leicester. I sang and signed for the Queen. And I was a BBC Songs of Praise finalist 2015 and 2016. I was a BBC 2 finalist. 2016 University Gospel Choir of the Year. I'm proud to be singing for one of the best gospel choirs in the United Kingdom. Who would have thought that a frightened girl escaping troubled Zimbabwe, rejected asylum status, will be standing here to say, hey, I survived. And my mother would be proud. If you're an asylum seeker here today, look at me and remember, keep your flame burning. It will heal your soul. Thank you.